Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Council. Disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Are there any? Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest for meeting on the January 15th. Report LLS-71-18. My pecuniary interest was direct. It was for myself and its ownership of business.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Moving on to the minutes of the special council meeting, the council meetings held January 8th and 9th. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, second by Deputy Mayor. Questions? All in favor? Carried. And then minutes of the closed meeting held on January 15th. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Hammond. All in favor? And that's carried. And then the minutes of the council meeting held, the regular council meeting held January 15th. Moved by Councillor
Jason McKee.
Seconded by Councillor Hammond. All in favor? And that's carried. Was there any business arising out of those minutes? See none. We'll move on to reports of staff and delegation, and that will be the Seniors Advisory Committee, and I'm turning that over to you, Ms. Percy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Statistics Canada projections show that seniors are the fastest growing age group in Ontario. In 2016, 16.4% of Ontario's population was 65 years or older. It's expected that the senior population in Ontario will double from 2.3 million seniors in 2016 to 4.6 million by 2041. Older people in Ontario now outnumber younger ones for the first time in Canadian history. The total number of adults 55 and over in Leamington is higher than the provincial average. In addition, Ontario's senior population is becoming increasingly diverse. The number of visible minority seniors in Ontario increased by 44% between 2011 and 2016, compared to a 16% increase among non-visible minority seniors. The World Health Organization has created a document entitled Age-Friendly Cities, with the purpose of engaging cities to become age-friendly in order to tap into potential of older persons as resources in their communities. An age-friendly community adapts its structures and services to be accessible and inclusive to the needs of all ages, all capacities and abilities. Many municipalities across Ontario set up some form of senior or older adults advisory committee. Those who have set up the committee locally include Windsor, Amherstburg, Tecumseh, Chatham-Kent. Although these committees have varying mandates specific to that respective community, many share the same philosophy: to help its respective council improve the lives of older adults and determine the service levels and needs to facilitate. Given the anticipated growth in the senior population, it's recommended that the municipality engage seniors in this community to seek their feedback and input on those issues affecting them specific to this community. Included in the report is the suggested mandate for the Seniors Committee for Leamington, which includes 3 categories: to engage, consulting with residents about those issues affecting seniors, provide opportunities for seniors to engage with and help address local concerns, provide a forum for them to exchange information, to educate, improve awareness of services available to seniors in Leamington and in the area, form partnerships in the community to educate, inform, and improve quality of life for seniors, and plan to find what an age-friendly community looks like in the local context, identify barriers to access by seniors in municipal programs, make suggestions for improvement, develop and bring forward recommendations to council on how to make Leamington more of an age-friendly community, relating to those matters that are within the municipality's jurisdiction. Administration is seeking council support of the concept of establishing a seniors advisory committee, and to direct administration to bring back draft terms of reference for review and consideration. There's no financial impact associated with this report, so the motion or recommendation before council is council approve the concept of a seniors advisory committee, and administration be directed to bring forward draft terms of reference for seniors advisory committee for council's consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Percy. We have 2 ladies from Chartwell that want to speak. Come on up to the table and tell us your name. Do we need addresses in this case? No, just your names are fine in your presentation. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Melissa Bloomfield. I'm a retirement living consultant with Chartwell Leamington.
And I'm Ashley Tuffin. I'm a Leamington resident. I'm also a regional director for Chartwell Retirement Residences, here to support Melissa tonight.
We are here today to ask the members of Leamington Town Council to consider supporting a seniors advisory committee for the municipality of Leamington. A society for all ages is multi-generational. It is not fragmented with youths, adults, and older persons going their separate ways. Rather, it is age-inclusive with different generations recognizing and acting upon their commonality of interest. That is a quote from Kofi Annan, Secretary General of the United Nations. CARP is a national nonprofit organization that advocates on behalf of adults age 45 and over. Its purpose is to promote social change in order to bring financial security, equitable access to healthcare, and freedom from discrimination to members. Locally, some of the initiatives we are working on are supporting the Mega Hospital Project, support for implementing a dementia strategy, and age-friendly initiatives, as well as supporting the opening of retail cannabis outlets in conjunction with provincial and federal programs. We have a close relationship with organizations such as Life After 50 and the Alzheimer's Society. By the year 2036, our province's older adult population will more than double to 4.1 million. This major change affects every jurisdiction in Canada and in Ontario. There is no actual legal age that determines what an older adult or senior is. Some social clubs may consider 55 an age, which would be deemed as an older person, and in the eyes of the government, a senior may be age 60 or 65, depending on federal and provincial guidelines pertaining to benefits. What we do know is that Ontarians are living longer, healthier lives than ever before. They are also seeking opportunities to stay active in their communities and in the economy. They are committed long-term residents of their communities, contributing their time, energy, wealth of knowledge to local projects and organizations. All they need is the opportunity. Older adults have the same needs as people of all ages: accessibility to healthcare, social services, public transportation, housing, safety, and strong social networks become more central to our lives as we age. Residents, organizations, governments, the business community, and the non-for-profit sector all need to work together to create social and physical environments that allow every person to participate fully. Local government plays an important role in the quality of life of a community through planning, policy development, and direct service delivery. The World Health Organization has 8 dimensions they use as guidelines to describe what an age-friendly community should consist of. Outdoor spaces in public buildings. When people view a neighborhood as safe and accessible, it encourages outdoor activities and engagement within the community. Accessibility involves removing barriers that limit opportunities for people with disabilities, including older adults with age-related impairments, and allowing older adults to participate in social activities or to access important health and social services and businesses. Transportation, the condition and design of transportation-related infrastructure such as signage, traffic lights, sidewalks, affects personal mobility. Access to reliable, affordable public transportation becomes increasingly important when driving becomes stressful or challenging. Housing. For many older adults, aging in place is desirable. They wish to stay in the community that they have lived in. The availability of appropriate affordable housing with a choice of lifestyles and locations and incorporates flexibility through adaptive features is essential for an age-friendly community. Social participation, interacting with family and friends, is an important part of positive mental health and community awareness. Social participation involves the level of interaction that older adults have with other members of their community and the extent that the community itself makes this interaction possible. Respect and social inclusion. Community attitudes such as general feeling of respect, recognizing the roles that older adults play in our society are critical factors for establishing an age-friendly community. Age-friendly communities foster positive images of aging and intergenerational understanding to challenge negative attitudes. Civic participation and employment. Civic engagement includes older adults' desire to be involved in aspects of community life that extend beyond their day-to-day activities, such as volunteering, becoming politically active, voting, or working for committees. Economic security is important for many older adults, particularly those with lower fixed incomes. The ability of an older adult to remain employed or find new employment provides economic security, and it benefits employers who recognize the experience and commitment that the older employees bring to the workplace. Age-friendly communities make sure that information about community events or important services is both readily available, accessible, and in formats that are appropriate for older adults. Moreover, an age-friendly community recognizes the diversity within the older adult population, promotes outreach initiatives to non-traditional families, ethnocultural minorities, newcomers, and Aboriginal communities. Community support and health services. Good mental and physical health contribute to quality of life and age friendliness. When evaluating age friendliness, consider access to community-related services that support physical or mental well-being and the availability of health promotion or awareness services that promote and support healthy behaviors and life choices. In the past, the municipality of Leamington has been marketed as the place to retire. What we want is for current residents to stay and new residents to come, both young and old. With the growing population of seniors, our area is an attractive location for those near and far. A seniors advisory committee is an integral part of a community. A goal of the committee might be to enhance the quality of lives for seniors living in Leamington. How do we do that? Perhaps we look at current policies, projects, and programs with an age-friendly perspective. Perhaps act as a public forum for issues that affect seniors in the community, promote awareness of the needs of seniors to residents, local businesses, and agencies. Join with other neighboring communities who are looking to better the lives of seniors and sharing initiatives. Recently, the town of LaSalle and town of Amherstburg have started seniors advisory committees. Our hope with the new town council is that they share the same vision as we do to make the best town possible for seniors to live and have a voice. A seniors advisory committee could be comprised of local seniors, council administrative staff, professionals that service seniors in the public sector, board members of seniors organizations, as well as youth. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing the municipality of Leamington work towards becoming an age-friendly community through the support of a seniors advisory committee. Just on a side note, the Minister of Seniors Affairs will be in the Windsor-Essex area on Thursday as well.
It's wonderful. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Council, questions, comments? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much for your report. It's very well done. And I agree. I think there's a need, and I think there's a place for a committee like this. I can see a lot of benefit to them helping out this council, this administration, to further the needs of the seniors, or to look after the needs of the seniors. So I would be in support.
Is that a motion?
I will make it a motion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Thiessen, seconded by Councillor Hammond with a comment.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. And I agree with Councillor Thiessen. I think that we could form a seniors committee, an advisory committee, much the same as what we do with the youth advisory committee. And I'm assuming that's how it's done, seek out applications of persons interested. And I think that we'll be overwhelmed by the number of people interested in doing that. And I think, too, we as a council try to look forward to all of the things we can do for our municipality, whether it be the recreation complex and all the things we do. In a lot of cases for the youth, like the new skateboard park, and maybe we can start focusing more on the seniors. So thank you. Great job, Melissa, on your report. And you too, Ashley.
There is also opportunities through the different initiatives with the government if you're having a seniors advisory committee for grants that are specific to things that are looking for the betterment of seniors in community. I took part of one in Windsor in 2017 where we hosted a senior summit. It was with CARP, with Windsor SAC, and we were successful in getting 100 professionals to come in and promote a senior summit and looking about becoming an age-friendly city and keeping up with that. So there's opportunity definitely with that funding as well.
So that's for me. Question.
Councillor Hammond, further?
Thank you again, Mary. So, Melissa, having said that, would you be willing to sit with us and help us get down the path? If you know the right steps to take in order to formulate this committee and get us on the right steps moving forward, would you be willing to help us do that?
I'd be more than happy to do that. And also my counterparts in Windsor, the CEO of Alzheimer's, and as well Larry Duffield, who is the chair of CARP. Sally Bennett-Olzak is CAO of Alzheimer's and head of Windsor Seniors Advisory Committee. They've helped me with this presentation and would be happy to work with us to see a Seniors Advisory Committee for Leamington.
Councillor, or Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor, the Mayor,
Leamington.
thanks. So I guess we're going to work it the same way. So we are going to have, the meetings will probably be held here. And will we be using staff to run the meetings? And do you need a council representative? Because I will make a motion now to put that name forward too.
Well, we still have the other motion on, we still have the other
No, I
motion
know,
on
I'm
the
just
floor.
kidding, yeah.
Ms. Percy, did you want to answer that?
Yes, Your Worship. The intent of bringing this report forward as council, considering the concept of a seniors advisory committee, is to listen to the dialogue that council and their wishes, what they would like to see, the way that the committee would operate, whether or not, how the membership existed, whether there would be a staff liaison and a council representative. Those are all would be defined within the terms of reference that administration would bring back to council, so that council can definitely set out what they want to see this committee doing in their mandate.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, so it's going to be the same too. I mean, you don't want more that, more is good, but it's, a similar committee. You're not going to have everybody there. It'll be the chosen. You're going to put out applications again also to do all this?
That's what I would see proposing to council, yes.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Great presentation. The fact that seniors do most of our volunteering and take up most of our organizations when it comes to a lot of these things, that's why it's crucial to have something like this. I have one question regarding your report, was that you support cannabis outlets, and I just wanted to know why through the seniors. Now, how does that pertain to the seniors? And that was just curious.
That is through the CARP initiative. CARP, which is the group that represents advocacy for seniors. We see this as being a big, it's a big issue in our area. In fact, we have an OPP coming to do a presentation to our seniors in the home in a couple of weeks on behalf of CARP. And it's about keeping people up with the times and things that are going on, and the opportunity for the financial gains to the community. And so CARP supports that.
And further, no, I just thought because of the CBDs and pain relief because of chronic arthritis, I thought that was the reasoning, or there was other issues as well that you were also the reason why you were supporting.
Absolutely. We believe that there's benefits to it, and as we know, as we get older, that's when your ailments are coming out, and if things can be dealt with alternatively, we're appreciative of what's available.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I can see the need for this and the worthiness behind it. It's a growing population here that we've always hosted, and it's only going to continue to grow bigger. I'm a little bit cautious, though. Council does have a full plate when it does come to committee of work, it seems like. So I would hope that this is one, looks like we're going to give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. But I would like maybe, after a year or two, we look back at all of our committees and see, is it, are we having progress with this? Is it worthy? All that kind of stuff. That's just something I'd like to look at in the future. And that goes to say with all of our committee work.
Ms. Percy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Part of good practice is that after every term or every start of a new term of council, we bring a report forward when we have the appointees, identifying any committees that council may want to reconsider that are no longer functioning, or because there's no longer a need for them. So recently we talked about the library and the skateboard park committee. Also in the committee appointment policy that council passed just a couple of months ago, there was I'm not sure if you recall, but there was a section at the end of that policy that specifically said that going forward, committees will now be required to bring forward a report annually identifying what they've accomplished and what they're going to do, so that they're being accountable to council and what they're doing.
Well, that's interesting. Well, one thing I think most of us noticed through the election, through the campaign, that the seniors are certainly the ones that are engaged. They know the topics, they know the issues, they definitely are an engaged generation. So this is a great opportunity. I wish we'd have thought of it sooner, quite frankly. Anyway, sounds like everyone's thinking it's a good thing. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so moving on to scent-free workplace, and that is Danielle.
Thank you, Mayor. So it is recommended that the council adopt HO4 scent-free workplace policy. The municipality's occupational health and safety policy sets out the municipality's commitment to health and safety of its workers. This policy was created due to the health concerns arising from exposure to scented products by persons with environmental sensitivities. It's common to find many workplaces, such as hospitals, doctors' offices, and other government agencies that have adopted policies for the protection of their workers and those attending their facilities. Exposure to the ingredients and chemicals in scented products can cause headaches, dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, fatigue, weakness, insomnia, numbness, upper respiratory symptoms, shortness of breath, skin irritation, confusion, or difficulty with concentration. The severity of these symptoms can vary. Some people report mild irritation, while others can be incapacitated. Exposure may require first aid or medical intervention and may include worker accommodations. Implementation of this policy will assist in the prevention of exposure and the onset of symptoms for those people affected. The goal would be for staff and facility attendees to use non-scented body products, optional items that give off scents such as air fresheners, scent-free clothing, and unscented or scent-free cleaning products. This policy will be communicated to all workers, posted in the workplace, and posted signage for facility attendees. There would be a nominal financial impact associated with the creation and the erection of signage.
Thank you, Danielle. Before I ask council their opinions or comments or questions, I'm just going to say, and with all due respect, Danielle, and I understand there are people with problems, but being a scent wearer, I have an issue with this scent-free workplace policy. I think that we have other issues within the building. I personally have a mold and mildew allergy, and if a few of us with the same symptoms spoke up, we would need to take that wall down out front, because quite frankly, I smell it every time I walk in. And I wonder too what we're going to do with the people who go out and have a cigarette and then come back smelling like an ashtray. Are we going to eliminate that odor as well? I find that we're a public place that we want to be accessible and inviting to our public to engage, and by putting up signs that say if you're wearing scent, that you shouldn't come in. I also have issues with the fact that, okay, we put a policy in place, and what are we going to do? Are we going to send people home? Are we going to discipline them? What's the point going forward? I understand that there is a 1% that might need this, but what about the other percent? We've become such a sanitized environment in North America that, to me, it's ridiculous. We live in a town that for years smelled of tomatoes, smells of mushrooms, smells of cannabis. We can't get rid of those, but we're going to get rid of the things that smell better. I just find that this is a policy that I know is being adopted, I'm going to say North America wide, but does it make sense? To me, it doesn't make any sense. What about the people that come in here that reek of body odor? What about the people that go to the library or to any place and they don't bathe? How far are we going to take this? I understand the idea behind it, but I just find it is all next to impossible to implement. And I've never been one. I think those of you that have known me for any kind of time, you know I don't like any kind of rule or regulation that then we don't follow up on. I don't see how we can, unless we become so dictatorial. I mean, you're not going to be able to have spray in the bathroom. They're telling you here now that you need to buy different products at home for your hair and your whatever else you're spraying. I just, and airing out your dry cleaning clothes, seriously? We don't have enough rules and regulations. You have to come and tell me now what I can put on and that I have to hang out my clothes when I get them from the dry cleaner? That's ridiculous. Again, I understand the premise, but for 1% of the population? Anyway, that's my comment, and I will continue to wear a scent until someone makes me leave the building. I forgot there's other people at the table. Deputy Mayor, did you have an opinion?
No opinion, just some unanswered questions too. You hit the comment on, I guess, body odor. You hit the comment on, I guess, the person using the bathroom ahead of you. I don't know really what to say about that. I'm just worried about, are we going to have, hire somebody to sniff? I mean, I don't know. It's just, I can see the point. It's almost like the peanut butter allergy. You got one person and 700 people can't have peanut butter. So I can see the issue, but is it justifiable? Haven't made my decision yet. Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
I'm just curious, has this come forward now because of an issue, because of a complaint, or is this us trying to catch up to what's going on out in some of the other workplaces?
We've had a couple issues over the years, but because we haven't had anything in place in order to address it, we've left it with the employee or their manager to kind of deal with it. At least this kind of brings it back to HR. So it would be us not as more of a reactionary, that if something comes to us and we're aware of it and it's affecting someone, we can address that person individually. It wouldn't be us proactively going out and trying to stop this. It would just be when something comes forward, we now have something in place that we can kind of address something and address that person individually.
Further?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, is that not a way we could continue to leave it, as if the issue arises, then it happens in that same direction, rather than seeking people out as they're walking in the door?
Did you expect Danielle to answer that? Just to comment.
In many occasions when we are faced with these sorts of problems, we find ourselves without the policy, and so then to take steps or take actions against the person who is offending the situation, the question becomes, well, what's the policy? The other part of this one is that it is an occupational health and safety concern of those who have severe sensitivities. So then the question is, what has the employer done to ensure the workplace is safe for those people who are identified as having these situations? Having the policy doesn't preclude us, as Danielle mentioned, doesn't preclude us from, we wouldn't be going out and proactively looking or trying to sniff out the offenders. It would be still on a complaint basis, but at least then we would have a policy to point to say, look, you know that there's a policy and it's causing somebody else pain. Can we change it? Our goal would not be to be disciplining people or sending people home. It would be hoped that people would abide as best they can by the policy and the intention of the policy, which is to keep others from being hurt by it. I hope that helps answer the question.
Councillor Thiessen.
I would say basically it's the same whether we have the policy or not. If somebody is offended or if somebody's actually having a medical crisis because of it, the issue is the same. You would hope that we can all get along without a bylaw for this and say, okay, you know what, I realize this person's sensitive, so I'm going to either remove myself from the situation, move down to the other end of the building, or do something else. And I would hope we could do this kind of thing without a bylaw.
Mr. CEO.
If it's council's wishes not to adopt the policy, we would continue to react in the same way that if there's a complaint, we'll address it. And those discussions can be very uncomfortable discussions, but they would occur nonetheless. So if your question is, can we accomplish the same thing? Perhaps the only difficulty is not having the policy in written form that gives notice to people that this is the direction we're trying to go.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Mayor. I come from the private sector, and this has been very common for this got really hot about, I want to say about 8 years ago, it seems like. I go into institutions, that's a big part of my business, is going in and selling products, and it's always being requested scent-free, whether it be soaps, lotions, even paper towels, stuff like that. Always has to be scent-free. It's become the norm, almost. And in my own office, I work with some great people who have sincere objections when it comes to how people smell, whether it be perfume, whether it be cigarette smoke. I've heard that one as well. These policies are so common anymore. We're selling signage continuously that we are a work for or scent-free workplace. The different institutions that we serve as companies. I look at it this way. Danielle's gone to the work here of putting this together. I don't see the harm of having it. All I would ask is that we tread super lightly with policies like this. You know, it could be incredibly damaging. I'd be appalled if somebody, approached me to use this bylaw against me. Just tread super lightly with this one. But I don't see the harm in having this, and I look at it more as a housekeeping matter for our HR probably to have this in place. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Those are all great points, I think, on both sides of it. I know at the store, we sell a lot of scented products, and it can be overwhelming. We all know people that overindulge when it comes to some of the scents, and you said the other scents that are prevailing. But again, just putting your underarm deodorant on, it might have offended somebody. And so am I going to get sent home for that kind of thing? And yet we try to be kind of others. Do you need this bylaw in place to enforce that fact that we're going to be conscious of others in that situation? I mean, they're sensitive, so we'll all try and stay clear. It is a very curious situation, and I understand that Councillor Wilkinson says there's a lot of places out there that are scent-free, but I know that's a bigger cost too. When it comes to in this grocery store, I know if to try and get scent-free of soaps and everything else, that's a specialty thing, and that's a little more of a cost to people as well. So I don't know where to draw the line here.
Well, as a municipality, we tend to work hard to make sure our staff are safe in any capacity. We also don't want to be in a position where we're liable and we knew that we had staff with these sensitivities and we didn't do anything to ensure that we had a process in place to help them if they needed it. That's what all of our health and safety policies are for. Some people it wouldn't apply to, but it's there if we need it. Same with this. It would obviously be handled with the utmost care, confidential. Again, this is why it comes back to HR, so it's not with multiple people to approach somebody about it. It would be with one department. When the person had an issue with somebody's scent or they were being affected by it, then it's not going through 3 people to try to assist them. It's through one to help them in whatever way we can. So as I said, it's definitely not proactive. It's definitely reactionary. If there's a complaint, then we'll deal with it at that time. All we can do is try to handle our liability in that we know that there are staff with sensitivities, so we need to be able to show that we are doing everything we can to protect them, with even as small as having a policy in place so we have something to fall back on should we need it.
Deputy Mayor?
Mayor, thanks. So this is more than just the town hall. We're talking Public Works, Fire Department, Water, and the complex. Good luck.
Boy, I wonder if shoppers in Lush are worried about liability, because I think we're getting ridiculous with liability, let alone restricting people's lives to the point that we are telling them what to do. This is beyond. I'm sorry, but this really gets my back up. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try to go in a bit of a different direction here. I mean, to Councillor Thiessen's question about how many times has this arisen that we need to deal with it, and then how do you deal with it? So it's my understanding, based on the answers given, that we're going to continue to deal with it just as exactly as what we've done in the past. I guess that means pulling the person aside and having a talk with them. So if we're not going to change the method of how we deal with it, then again, we go back to the policy. We're unique here. And Deputy Mayor Verbeek just touched on it. Some of the businesses that Councillor Wilkinson may go into may be the hospital, may be different things. But here, if it covers the entire municipality, and you've got firemen showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning in their pajamas and doing whatever and getting in the back of that truck and riding out there and coming back, my fear is this. Once you put something in writing in terms of a policy, I wouldn't want to see, and this is by no means just the fire department, I'm thinking about the Board of Works and the pollution plant and other places. If it was just for this building, I might have a different understanding. But I would hate to see some individual bring the policy forward because he doesn't like the person that he's riding beside in a dump truck or something else, and bring this, well, a fire truck, a dump truck, anything else, and bring this policy forward just to bring that person in, either to be embarrassed or to be, because you can only act on the complaint as it's driven by the individual. If you're not there yourself to really say, yeah, this person does have an issue with wearing too much cologne or too much perfume or too much hairspray, how do you really know that it's factual? Unless more than one person comes forward and tells you that. So I think by putting a policy in place, I think, Danielle, I think you make it more difficult for yourself. And as I said, if it was just this building, it might be a different scenario, but it's not. And I know what some of the fellas, that's not a very good way to go. I know that people don't have control at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Even the Board of Works fellows who have been out moving snow all night may not have control and care over how they smell at the end of the day. And I think that by putting a policy in place, we may be giving more fuel to someone else who doesn't like an individual to come forward and lay a complaint. And then I don't know how you deal with it. So those are my comments.
So I guess we're at the end of the road here. What are council's wishes? Councilor Wilkinson.
Mayor, I'll put it on the table. I'll support the recommendation.
Seconded.
Recommendation.
Seconded by the recommendation as written. Seconded by. Okay. So then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that fails. Did you want just, that's it? Okay, all right. Then we'll move on to the next one, which is council benefits and pregnancy or parental leave. And that is you as well, Danielle. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. HO2, council benefits and pregnancy or parental leave. It is recommended that the council adopt the revised HO2 council benefits and pregnancy and or parental leave policy. Bill 68, Modernizing Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act 2016, received royal assent on May 30th, 2017. The bill requires that all municipalities have a policy related to pregnancy and parental leave for members of council. This section comes into force on March 1st, 2019. The Act indicates that the offices of members of council are protected from being declared vacant during an absence related to pregnancy, birth, or adoption of a member's child for up to 20 consecutive weeks. The HO2 council benefits policy has been revised to include a section addressing a council member's right to pregnancy and/or parental leave. This policy will be communicated to council members. This policy will also be communicated during new council orientations. The policy does not include any changes on how council members are enrolled in the municipality's benefits plans. And for council's information, however, the benefit plan premiums are as follows. For a single plan, it is $77.32 per month, so that's 50% of the regular rate. Family is $203.58 a month, and life insurance is $43.73 a year. This policy contemplates that a council member's benefits and pay continuing during the leave, as a council member does not pay employment insurance premiums and is therefore not eligible to collect the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Are there comments or are there questions? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. Danielle, in trying to read through this over the weekend, is it possible for an individual just to pull out the life insurance part of this policy, to be able to participate in that?
Yeah, you can, the only thing that are required are OMERS pensions. So Green Shield benefits or Sun Life benefits are completely optional, and it's 50% paid by the employer and 50% paid by the council member. So if anybody's interested, they can come see me and I can put them in.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And what would council like to do on this? Moved by, the recommendations moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Danielle. For your first time, I know it was a bit of a baptism by fire, but it's nothing personal, okay?
It's good practice.
Okay. And we can be easy to get along with. Just once in a while, we have some opposition. So you did a good job. And now we're turning to the tender award for the LKRC shower renovation. Mr. Simons.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here tonight to recommend the award of the Leamington Kinsman Recreation Complex shower renovation project to Front Construction in the amount of $142,200. As part of this recommendation, it is asked that Council pre-approve $47,200 of additional spending from the previously approved 2018 budget for this project due to increased scope of work and potential unknown issues. It's recommended that $17,200 be funded from the Complex Reserve Fund and $30,000 be funded net from revenue for the 2019 budget. It is finally recommended that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the contract. The existing Shirkside male and female change room shower area has been unchanged since it was built in 1985. In recent years, there have been various operational issues and more recent significant issues with the infrastructure around this area of the facility. Administration looked at this project late in 2017 in anticipation for the 2018 budget year. During the original preparation of the tender documents, along with an anticipated completion for the summer of 2018, it was determined that further investigation would be prudent. During this investigation, alongside consultant Baronetti Construction, the scope of work changed. In addition to the scope changes, there was a significant infrastructure issue in the female change area late in the summer of 2018 that put the project on the back burner until it was resolved. Administration posted the tender on Thursday, November 22nd of 2018 with an original close date of December 19th. There's a mandatory site meeting on December 5th at which 17 people were in attendance. Due to a series of questions, the closing date was extended to January 9th. There were 26 registered plan takers and 8 submissions received. Please refer to the summary on the report. The 2018 complex capital budget has approved $120,000 for this project. These dollars will be reserved to fund this project for the 2019 budget year. Again, due to the expanded scope of work and infrastructure unknowns, it is requested that an additional $47,200 to fund this project. Details are summarized in the table. In the 2018 budget, the Kinsman Complex Reserve is anticipated to have a balance of $936,395. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Are there questions? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. Terry, a couple, if I may. How long do you anticipate this project to take? And question one, and question two, what do you do to offer shower services in the meantime while this work is being done?
You turn that on, please?
Sorry.
Thanks.
I thought it was on, sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor. We are going to utilize the family change room showers. We've got a bit of a plan where we're going to close off access to the pool from the change room areas, and people will have to enter the pool through the lobby. For the first portion of the project, that access will be closed off for the male and female. We're going to do the work in the female shower area first, and we're going to have kind of like a construction corridor to that. It would be the west side emergency exit doors where they'll remove the materials and bring materials in. Once the female change room is complete, we'll shift that work zone over so that you can access the pool area from the change rooms in the family and female area, and it will continue to be restricted for the male. With the family change room, we'll address the shower area similar to the female change room, where that will now be a male shower area for the duration of the male portion of the project. It'll be one at a time. We will not close both showers at once.
Great, Terry, thank you. You know, I anticipate that question is going to be asked a number of times. That's why I ask it. Thank you.
Terry, I didn't see it in here, but when are you predicting starting the job, starting the project?
Once I'm able to get the contractor on board, we'll sit down and meet. There are a few special events through the month of February and early March, so we'll work around those schedules and determine an appropriate start date.
Okay. The reason I say I was stopped at the Shirk this morning by a patron, and he said that last week he was in the shower and he was showering away. All of a sudden, he said he was just scalded with hot water. And he said how it was definitely long overdue. So I told him that we were in the process. So you're not expecting to start then? You're telling me till March? Expectation, ballpark?
We have a swim meet February 10th,
Okay.
so sometime after that.
Okay, all right. At least I can pass that on when I see him tomorrow. Thank you. Council. Moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Terry. Moving on to electronic participation at council meetings, and that would be you, Ms. Percy.
This is an item that was brought forward as a change to the Municipal Act through the introduction of Bill 68. As of January 1st, 2018, members of municipal councils, some local boards and committees may be able to participate in a meeting by electronic means. While the provision has been made, it's not mandatory, and the Act confirms that a council member participating electronically doesn't count for quorum, and they cannot participate electronically in a closed meeting. For the purpose of this report, electronic participation includes telephone, video, or audio conferencing, or other interactive method whereby members, staff, and the public are able to view and hear the council member participating by electronic means, and the member participating by electronic means can view and hear the other members, public, and staff. When considering whether or not to permit electronic participation, council should consider the following factors: concerns with audio and/or video quality, technological challenges to facilitate the two-way dialogue. The legislation fails to define what participation means: email, video, FaceTime, text, loss of connection, or any connection issue which impedes the ability of a council member to participate in the meeting in real time. At this time, administration does not recommend that council implement the use of electronic participation due to both technical and procedural complexities. However, should council wish to enable this provision, it would be prudent for administration to conduct a review of best practices to determine the most appropriate method to facilitate electronic participation. There's no financial impact associated with this report, and the recommendation is that council prohibit electronic participation by council members in council meetings, and that the procedural bylaw be amended to reflect with greater clarity and certainty that electronic participation at meetings is not permitted.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Percy, I was disappointed at this one that we weren't going to go ahead with it or it wasn't being recommended. I'm just wondering, is there any other councils in the county, city, or in Ontario that are going about their meetings where you can electronically participate somehow?
Most clerks are bringing these reports forward now, now that the new term of council has begun and we're looking at our procedural bylaws. Locally, I'm not aware of any of the clerks recommending this to their councils. I do know that Ottawa is using this only for one committee meeting.
Deputy Mayor,
The Mayor, I'll make the motion that we opt out of this.
which is the recommendation?
Correct.
Seconded by Counselor Thiessen. Comments, questions? Counselor Dunn?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So is this, when we vote on this, is it just for us or is it also our committees? Because the BIA presently made their own motion to vote on things through, and other committees may do the same thing. So when it comes to us, and I understand the way some people are thinking, because some of the technology is not there, in my opinion, that to make it 100%. So I'm just curious, does this vote go on down to our committees as well?
So this is intended to reflect the decision or electronic voting participation by council, committees, and local boards.
And further, so that once we made this direction, then it'll have to be passed on to our committees to let them know this is the direction that we have set up. Okay, thank you.
Good question, Counselor Dunn. I think that was an excellent question. Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the post-election accessibility report, and I'm assuming that's you again.
Section 12.1 of the Municipal Elections Act requires the clerk, who's responsible for conducting an election, to have regard to the needs of electors and candidates with disabilities. The clerk is also required to prepare a plan regarding identification, removal, and prevention of barriers that affect electors, candidates with disabilities. Such plan to be made available to the public before voting day in a regular election. Lastly, within 90 days after voting day in a regular election, the clerk must prepare a report about the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers that affected electors and candidates with disabilities. This report is a housekeeping matter and therefore satisfies a requirement under the Municipal Elections Act. So the purpose of this report, again, is to evaluate the accessibility of the electoral services offered to electors and candidates during the election. There are 6 main areas that we focused on, the first being election preparation. We reviewed the relevant legislation and implemented a number of initiatives to ensure compliance. An election accessibility plan was prepared and reviewed by the Leamington Accessibility Advisory Committee. The committee provided positive feedback and noted that the plan was thorough. Secondly, the method of voting. On April 24th, 2017, Council passed Bylaw 2217, which authorized the use of telephone and internet voting for the 2018 election. The use of telephone and internet voting enhanced the overall accessibility of the election by allowing electors to cast their ballots using a smartphone, tablet, laptop, telephone, anytime from Friday, October the 12th to Monday, October the 22nd. Electors with disabilities had the option to use the system's built-in accessibility features to enlarge the font size, adjust the color, contrast, and have the security text read aloud. As well, personal assistive technologies were compatible with the electronic voting system from anywhere, and a demonstration video of the electronic voting system was available on the municipality's election website. There was one issue, however, that I'd like to make council aware of. We did have an individual phone to say their JAWS screen reader would not read the voter information letter properly. Specifically, JAWS would not read the candidates' names or the pins required to vote. Intelibut was contacted immediately and notified of the situation. We worked with the individual and advised them that we would accommodate them to ensure that they could cast their ballot. Initially, we set up an appointment with an election official to attend this person's home to assist them with voting, but it was discovered prior to the visit that the elector had successfully cast their ballot using the telephone. This was confirmed to the elector and no further action was taken. The third area was staff training. Election staff completed accessibility training and reviewed how to provide assistance to voters who had a disability. It was stressed that the electors should be allowed to exercise as much independence as possible in the voting process and allow electors the opportunity to identify their own needs before offering to provide assistance. The fourth was voting assistance. While there was no polling locations, voter help centers were set up at the Kinsman Recreation Complex and at the municipal office. Several weeks prior to opening of the voting period, a set-up sketch of the voter help center was prepared, as well as an accessibility checklist which took into account potential barriers that might pose a problem to those voters who had a disability. The setup of the voting kiosks at the municipal office, for example, took into consideration the need for wheelchairs to pass between the kiosks without issue. Also, desktop computers with privacy screens and tablets were used. Font sizes were adjusted if needed, so that those with a visual impairment could vote more effectively. The voter help centers extended hours during the week and were open on the weekends to accommodate electors. There was also the choice that an elector could use a mouse to cast their ballot or a touch-screen computer. Election officials treated all electors with dignity and respect. Many electors provided positive feedback on the great electoral service provided by the election officials. Voting assistant at residential facilities. We attended 7 different residential facilities to assist people with voting. These voter assistance centers were scheduled in advance with the cooperation of that facility's administrator. Election officials brought with them secure laptops with stylus pens, as well as laptops for the electors to use. For electors that could not leave their room to cast their ballot, bedside assistant was offered as an alternative. With respect to information and communication, the municipality considered accessibility in all information and communication strategies. Upon request from electors, election documents could be modified to meet the specific need of the elector. Further, election information was provided in 3 languages, English, French, and Low German. The translation of an election document into Spanish and Low German was the first time the municipality has provided this. Election information was communicated through various channels and alternate formats, including emails, social media, radio advertisements. The municipality's website was designed to be both informative and accessible and was compliant with WCAG 2.0 Level 8 guidelines. It was the goal of the clerk to ensure that electors within the municipality who required accessible services were provided with the best opportunity to vote as independently as possible in the election. The clerk's staff also strived to make the nomination and registration process as accessible as possible for candidates and third parties. There's no financial impact associated with this report, and the recommendation is council receive the report for information.
Thank you, Brenda. Comments? Are there questions? Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, thank you. Just a comment, Brenda. First of all, it was a great report, and I want to compliment you and your staff on the way the election was run. It was great. But more importantly, there was a lot of feedback, great feedback about the voter help centers, especially when you set them up on Thursday nights at the Leamington Kinsman Recreation Complex. A lot of people said, boy, that'd be great, because they wouldn't have voted if it wasn't for that help center. So thank you to you and your staff for doing that.
Anyone else? Motion to receive the report. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Thiessen, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the proactive bylaw enforcement.
Thank you. As council will recall, at its August 27th, 2018 meeting, council directed administration to commence proactive bylaw enforcement in the Uptown as a pilot project, to assign a current bylaw enforcement officer specifically to the project, and to bring forward a report in connection with the impact prior to the 2019 budget. The purpose of this report is to provide a status report in connection with proactive bylaw enforcement in the Uptown and the associated impacts of the same. The goal of the project was to improve the visual appeal of the Uptown through proactive enforcement of the property standards bylaw, the land maintenance bylaw, and the sign bylaw. The assigned officer was also responsible to continue to work with Public Works to deter contraventions of the waste management bylaw, educate uptown business and property owners and residents about these bylaws and their responsibility to comply with them, provide information about the municipality's community improvement plan, and direct business owners to the municipality's economic development office. The bylaw enforcement officer has inspected properties used for commercial purposes in the uptown, as well as the exteriors of some residential properties, generally those in buildings which also have commercial uses, for example, if the property is a mixed use. The remaining residential properties have not been inspected. And I just wanted to note that the uptown is considered the BIA, and I attached as Appendix 2 those areas that are included. The statistics related to proactive enforcement are attached to the report as Appendix 3. Out of the 141 properties that were inspected, 25 were issued notices of violation as they were found to have one or more deficiencies according to the property standards bylaw. The vast majority of the deficiencies were related to peeling cracked or faded paint. Council will note that 16 of the notices remain outstanding, and this is mostly due to the fact that paint must be applied in warm weather. It's expected that the deficiencies will be remedied by mid-spring. 3 property standards orders were issued. If there are no appeals or if the work is not completed, the municipality will undertake the work required pursuant to the orders. The cost of the work will be applied to the tax roll of the property and form a priority lien. Tickets were issued under the waste management bylaw to offenders in connection with garbage left in the area behind 10 to 14 Erie Street North. Bylaw enforcement officers report a decrease in garbage left on private property and municipal property. When possible, the officers discuss the CIP with business owners and recently have begun to include a CIP information sheet with notices of violation. If council wishes for administration to continue to undertake proactive enforcement in the uptown, it is recommended that such enforcement be related to the 3 bylaws previously mentioned, and the assigned officer would continue his work with Public Works and educating uptown business and property owners. Council may wish to consider 2 matters associated with proactive enforcement related to properties that contain residential uses. Several buildings within the uptown are mixed use with commercial on the lower and residential in the upper. In these cases, inspections of the exterior necessarily included inspections of the entire structure. There are several streets, however, that have mostly residential uses and detached dwellings. Council may wish to consider whether proactive enforcement of these properties is desirable. Alternatively, if council wishes to direct proactive enforcement in connection with properties used for residential purposes, it is recommended that the interior not be subject to the same for a number of reasons. One is the main purpose for council directing proactive enforcement is to improve upon the aesthetics of the uptown, and inspection of the interior of a residential property would do little toward achieving that goal. The time that an officer would spend inspecting the interior of a residential property is much greater than the interior of a commercial property, and an occupant of a property used for residential purposes has the right to refuse an officer from entering a property. Usually calls for inspections of interior of residential properties are due to the lack of attention of a landlord. Relating to the financial impact, there are 2 risks. One is the risk of litigation due to the immunity provision of Section 450 of the Municipal Act, which indicates that there is no proceeding based in negligence for a non-enforcement of a bylaw. Therefore, the municipality is at risk of litigation alleging that negligent proactive enforcement decisions would be scrutinized for evidence of selective enforcement, and this may result in arguments that the municipality is acting in bad faith. The financial impact of proactive enforcement is associated with claims for negligence. That would be claims against our own insurer. Claims history is a significant factor considered by an insurer when determining an increase in premiums. The second is the resources utilized. Since September 2018, the average time to commence an investigation in connection with reactive enforcement, that is responding to a CityWorks request, is 4 working days following receipt. The response time is longer than the average response time in the previous 2 years. Response times of bylaw enforcement officers over the last year have been impacted by changes to legislation related to cannabis, the requirement for inspections of home occupations under the business licensing bylaw, and council's direction to proactively enforce bylaws with the Uptown. There are generally also just increases in requests for service. It is also important to note that the pilot project commenced at the beginning of September, and the busiest time of year for enforcement historically has been the summer. For these reasons, depending upon the option that council chooses, administration will recommend including an additional $10,000 to $20,000 within the 2019 budget for the cost of additional resources to ensure that response times are not further negatively impacted. So you'll note that I have included options within the recommendation. The first option is that council direct administration to revert to reactive bylaw enforcement, and that means to not continue with the pilot project at all. The second is that council may direct administration to continue proactive enforcement of the 3 bylaws noted, excluding properties used strictly for residential purposes, but including the exteriors of the residences in mixed-use buildings. And the third option is to direct administration to continue proactive enforcement of those 3 bylaws, including the exteriors of all residential properties.
Council, before, before I open the floor, I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about, what I feel is my take on what's happened with the proactive bylaw enforcement. Started yesterday. I got a call from a lady that owns a business uptown, and she'd been served a notice that she needed to have her building painted in a fair bit of time. She took it at she needed to have it done within 30 days, but it wasn't quite as drastic as she thought it was upon further look at the document. But I took a drive over to her building, and the complaint was cracked and peeling paint. And I took a look at the building, and I realized that what we had envisioned of this proactive bylaw was not what was actually happening. When we first asked about a proactive bylaw, we were looking to get those derelict buildings cleaned up. We were looking to get the habitual offenders to be brought into line. We were looking for, flagrant, dilapidated. And we are now at the point of sending letters to people with cracked and peeling paint. And if you looked at the place from the street, you probably wouldn't even notice it. It wasn't. But I realized that perhaps we'd not been specific enough when we were talking about proactive bylaws. And I would say the intent or what I had seen happen, and at the beginning it was all, I think it was all conundrum over the words proactive and reactive. And my take on this was what we wanted to have happen with bylaw, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we wanted bylaw to go from waiting for someone to complain about the garbage in front of the receptacle at something or other Mill Street, to the place that had an awning half hanging down, to the place that doesn't clean up the garbage in its little alcove That was what we were wanting the bylaw officers, if they saw it, not to drive by, but to notify the property owner this had to be cleaned up. That, to me, was what we were looking at. What we ended up getting, and I don't think we were clear, I'm not blaming anyone, I don't think we were clear enough in saying we didn't want to go to the extreme, and I think we've come to the extreme. We really wanted, like I said, the flagrant disobedience of our property standards to stop. Same with when we have a couch deposit on Cherry Lane, we would like someone to pick it up without 5 trucks driving by it. But when that isn't the mandate, then people don't do it. So to me, I don't want to change the word proactive, but I want to change the intent of proactive. I would suggest to you that we don't need to have a bylaw officer do this for 8 hours every day, 5 days a week. I would suggest we have him do it from 1 to the top 1.5 hours in the morning. To drive by, do a quadrant a day if there's any flagrant things on the sidewalk, or just property standards, sign bylaw infractions. That's the kind of thing we were looking at. We weren't looking at being the Gestapo, for heaven's sakes, and I think we've become that simply because we were not clear enough at the very beginning. We just used the word proactive, and you can't blame anybody. It's just the fact that that's how it evolved. We gave staff direction, they took direction, and they followed it to the nth degree, and we should have been a little bit more particular. So that's what I wanted to say to you. I think I would like to see our bylaw officers be proactive in that when they see something, they move on it. They notify the offender, they notify the offending property. That's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at throwing the book at people. If you don't paint your property within 30 days because your paint's cracking, we're going to start fining you $100. That's not what we wanted. We wanted things to be cleaned up. This lady also ended up, come to find out, she had already applied for the CIP to repaint her place in the spring. So yeah, they're handing out CIP information, but our officers also need to make sure that no one's in the queue for the CIP before those papers or those letters, notifications are sent out. So there's a number of things there that I feel need to be addressed. So I just wanted to give you that bit of a postscript, Paul. Paul wasn't involved at the beginning in those talks, and I wanted you to know where I feel we went wrong, if you will, where we weren't specific enough. And yeah, I believe it was we weren't specific enough. That's all I got to say on it, so I'm opening the floor to whoever. So Paul, we'll start with you.
Madam Mayor, that is kind of the way I always thought it would be, it's more directed towards a safety and garbage laying in the street just attracts vermin and looks terrible, and the garbage is probably placed somewhere where it's not supposed to be to begin with. Those kinds of things, and like you say, awnings falling down or signs falling down, or I think too, we're just asking them to be, just have an eye open and just don't walk past something that is flagrant or that is a safety issue. If a fence is falling down or something to that effect. But I agree, cracked and peeling paint, I don't think we need to get that specific. And as far as going into residences, unless you're invited into a residence by a renter for a flagrant violation, there's no need to go house to house and knock on the door and walk in and say, we're here to inspect. That's not the intent of this, I don't think. As far as the time taken to respond, I would say if it comes through City Works, those are the residents that are calling in and complaining about an issue. I would put that as a priority. And then I would also, unless there is something that is of immediate danger to a resident, City Works would get, to me, would get the priority call on that, and then you move down the list as it comes. As far as risk goes, I think we're going to get, if we were challenged on it, I think we could be challenged if we're not if we're not going after people who are flagrant violators, and we're also going to have a problem if we just walk by and wait to be reactive. I think proactive or reactive, our risk is the same. You're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't in some cases. I would rather be proactive, try and clean up the town, and also cleaning up the town would help, I think, to get some of the neighbors to also clean up their places. I think it's just a natural course that we need to go down. I want to keep the proactive idea behind this.
Thank you. I have Councillor Hammond next.
Mayor, thank you. You know, I agree with a lot of things you said. I too, I know I come here the day after we passed the proactive bylaw. And I just happened to come in the building and the bylaw enforcement officers were talking at length and they were confused about what their obligations and duties were. And that was incumbent upon us to give them our thoughts and desires, and we didn't do that. So now is the time to do it. You touched a little bit about, and I too want to continue to be proactive. And I agree with Councillor Thiessen that I don't think we need to be going into residents. But one thing I will note is that you had mentioned maybe an hour and a half a day. I would still like to see us spend more time than that. And for one of the reasons is I want to see this area expanded. Currently, we only do the BIA area as we know it now, the CIP area uptown, and I don't think that's enough. So I know we're talking about expanding our CIP area, and when we do expand that, I expect our bylaw enforcements to cover that area as well. You know, it doesn't make sense to me to go down half of Clark Street and do one side and not do the other. So, and maybe we can look at adjusting the time when we do finally get a larger BI area and or a CIP area to do that. But I agree with you. We want to continue moving forward. If we had chunks of cement falling off with paint on them, yes, that's a problem. But I thought too that we were more concerned about the awnings and all of those things and broken windows and all of those things you just addressed. So I'm looking at option 2 with some of the changes that we'd already spoken about.
You're going to have to wait, Councillor Thiessen, sorry. I have Deputy Mayor next.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just would like to know if there's any, I guess, any numbers on time spent out there, or we're neglecting other areas of the town, just not the CIP, because we're dedicating. I'm not saying it's not important, but Councillor Thiessen did mention that if a city works comes in and we see it and it's a priority, well, hang on a second here now. Are we reactive or are we proactive? I am going to move back to reactive because I think it gets more bang for the buck, and also include in there another option, or the property standards, that if they see something as they're driving by, pick it up, mark it, and put it down if you have to pick up garbage. But I know you got to go through the whole spiel of issuing orders and all that other stuff, which doesn't make sense. But are we going to need to hire somebody else if we continue down this road?
To address the specific question, no, we would not need to hire an additional person if we maintain proactive enforcement as we have been maintaining. Even if you choose option 1 or 2, like I indicated, it would look like about 10 to 20,000 in additional resources. That might be contract or it might be overtime costs. If the area were expanded, we'd have to look at response times and determine if it's warranted to hire an additional officer. So my notes indicate that only about 66 hours were spent on proactive enforcement. So the reaction time to the City Works requests are impacted more likely by the other items that I indicated, due to the cannabis legalization, due to the business licensing review of home occupations. I anticipate that will be much less in 2019 as well, because it was the inspections of the initial applications. The inspections on renewals will not happen very often. So I would hope that those response times would go back to pre-2018 time. I would hope that that would happen.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I thought it was well worded, what you said to start off here tonight. Yeah, our interpretation of proactive, I think, was, I don't know, not understood what we wanted. After we left here that day, we did have debate amongst council, you know, do we really want to put bylaw officers up into the core for 8 hours a day? And no, I don't feel that's necessary. I feel like we're, you know, introducing a police state at that point. But I definitely welcome the presence of our bylaw officers uptown. What that time frame is, you mentioned an hour and a half. Is that in the morning, whenever? I kind of think more towards the weekend is a very, you know, vital time where I'd be really focused on what times we're putting bylaw officers uptown. You know, I still continue to drive through continuously on Sundays. It seems like I still see people out preaching on our four corners with pamphlets, you know, behind them, and they got full displays in behind them. I'm seeing that often on Sundays, and I don't go through town too often, but I know we got staff on duty those days. How it is, you know, they're not seeing that. I give my head a shake. I can't figure it out. When I say proactive, yeah, I think it's important that we keep the proactive portion of our bylaw concept or approach. I think it has to stay in there. I hope our entire staff, you know, if Rob's driving into work or Paul's driving into work and they happen to see something on the side of the road, I hope that they're proactive in their approach too, where they come in and say, hey, I seen something today, let's go get it picked up and do our part. Do you got to wait around for a City Works complaint to come in? No. But be on the hunt. I often am kind of amused by, I see the guys out on Saturday mornings as they look for yard sale signs. And it's like they're on their hunt, it seems like. You know, they are actively pursuing these things. I can see it. Again, I wonder to myself, I think then, I wish that type of attention was given to my uptown or in the urban area. You know, you can go down any of our inner streets out in the urban area there and you can find a lot of stuff to write down on your pad and take back to them to complain about. Definitely, go after our usual suspects, our habitual wrongdoers. We know who they are, we know the addresses, we know all the usual players. They continue to thumb their nose at us. Those are where I want proactive concentrated on. Readjust our priorities, you know. We still, to this day, we've been talking about signs for as long as I've been on this council, yet today we still have businesses without signs uptown. We still have windows that are cluttered with what I would think is, you know, an offense to the property standard. Go after businesses that are dumping garbage into our garbage receptacles that cause them to overflow on a, you know, just about every weekend. It's very common. Go after the culprits that, you know, have abandoned cars or collect a pile of cars in behind their businesses. That's where I want our guys to be proactive, focus their efforts on. I had it brought to my attention here during the campaign as we were uptown. Some good businesses, you know, that pulled us aside to show us, you know, we've had the bylaw officers here. They're looking at my windowsills and they're saying this is, you know, an issue. Do something with it. I look down the street right away, you know, I don't have to look 200 feet down the road to say, you know, yes, I don't blame you for being upset on this one. You know, I can see, that's kind of where I go to readjust the priorities. When I say readjust the priorities, you know, focus on our known hot spots, I guess. That's my take on it. As for going into the residential portions, no, I don't think we need to go inside. But that's my thoughts.
Councillor Dunn.
To you, Madam Mayor. We gave our bylaw officers a job to go out and start cleaning up the uptown. That was all of our directive. Now, they get down there, and some paint, it may just be flaking, you might not see it, but there's other ones that are worse off, that are really bad. So how are they going to pick and choose between? If they're going, we send them direction to go out and have to clean up this uptown, they're picking up where they see the problems are. And again, if we just, and yes, there's hot spots, absolutely. And those are the ones that keep cutting calls on. But again, is that not what we were talked about when it came to Ruth saying that we don't want to look like we're hitting just picking and choosing who we want when it comes to the proactive? We have to make sure we want the uptown cleaned up. We want it cleaned up. We want a fresh coat of paint on it. If it's becoming deteriorated or letting it go, we can't just pick and choose. You know what? If you're not keeping your business to a certain standard, what we want, and I thought that's what we wanted, to bring it up to a certain standard. We don't want the derelict cars or buildings or anything else. But how did they get there? By the paint peeling off and the other things starting to get dilapidated. So again, they're going down the street, they see paint. I can understand where they're coming from. My question to you, Ruth, is that when it comes to the 66 hours that they put out, so they've had pretty well, the bylaw officer in charge has probably been pretty well all around town to all the different businesses for the most part, or do they have outstanding lists that they're still compiling that they're doing?
No, we've covered the uptown, the commercial properties, and the mixed-use properties. Did not go to the residential properties that are within that BIA area, but all of the commercial properties have been inspected.
And I understand that it's proactive because we do have certain ones that are constant, and even with the reactive, there was constant being called back. So those ones we've got to get back out and check on. But I do understand where you're coming from, and I think the proactive is still the way to go. But I like the fact that you're giving out the information. That we're getting communication with all these different business owners that saying, listen, your paint may be peeling, but we have a CIP program that will offer you the assistance. Definitely the garbage is cleaned up in the uptown and a lot better. I mean, we may still have issues, but it's a lot better situation than it was when we first started off. So commend you on all that kind of work. You hit the resources where we need that. Is additional was by contracting out, is what you said, by the $10,000 or $20,000 is what you were talking about to additional resources.
We could look at overtime, we could look at some contract, we could look at just reallocating staff to different areas. So it was just, I don't want to see reactive enforcement be impacted more so than it already has by this project. So the additional resources would just be to deal with just probably just in the summer, I would hope. And it's just if we get to the point where we're finding our response times are just getting beyond that.
Another question to you, if I may, Madam Mayor, is that, so what in your opinion would get that bylaw officer through the uptown, now that we've hit pretty well all the businesses and we know those problem areas, and to keep out, how much time do you think that would need to be allotted just to be proactive in the uptown area and then be able to go on to the reactive?
That's really difficult to say. Now that we've gone through a one sweep of the commercial businesses in the uptown, now it's follow-up, and it will be just staying on top of that. So I would say less time than we've spent so far, because once all of the buildings are in compliance, then it's just maintaining that compliance. So less than the time that's already been spent.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, no one was blaming the bylaw officers. I was saying that we ourselves should have been a little more specific in the directions that we gave. So no one was blaming them at all. I just think that sending a directive in January to paint your building is a little bit beyond the pale, if you will. And we should be perhaps a little bit more specific. That's all I was asking to do, and I think the rest of council agreed with me. I'm certainly not blaming them at all. They did what we asked them to, and I'm just saying maybe we should claw back some of it. That's all. So council. Well, perhaps first, Mr. Neufeld. So if we look at the options, and council is saying a few more specifics, should we include the specifics, or how, you know, what do you want, what should we do beyond the options? Because obviously we don't want 8 hours a day. And especially as Ms. Orton just said, there'll be less requirement because we've already pulled so many people into compliance. Can we give further direction? Do we enlarge on the options? What would you suggest?
Well, first, I think that the comments that have been made here do help to clarify council's hopes, I guess, maybe is the best way of doing it. I think some of the difficulty comes in the definition of a proactive bylaw enforcement program because it does have some legal definition around it. So when we as administration hear proactive bylaw enforcement, what you have seen is what you get. But to describe what you're wanting, to me, is and hear me out, is not a proactive program, bylaw enforcement program. What you're asking for is a reactive program where we are more assertive in taking our own initiatives when we see it. Some would call that being proactive, but I'm trying to get away. I know it's just semantics, and I heard what the mayor said, and I've heard what each of you said, that it's important to remain proactive. But if I can rephrase that and say it's still reactive, because as Councillor Thiessen said, when somebody reports something through CityWorks, that is given the priority. So we're still have the same kind of a reactive program, but we are to be more assertive when we're out there responding to these complaints. So we're out to look at a complaint for garbage and we see vehicles. Let's not just turn ourselves away, and I'm not suggesting that we have, but to be able to give our bylaws officers clear direction and definition around what the expectations are within a reactive program, that to me is what I'm hearing you describe. Now, in fairness, I think that council, having put the emphasis and focus on bylaw enforcement, have been wanting to continue to use that word proactive. So we end up with this bit of a conflict in what we foresee as proactive and what you're looking for. What you're describing isn't really a true proactive bylaw enforcement program. What you're wanting has been clearly defined here this evening. Although even within that, there's going to be some interpretation about what is and what isn't offending the bylaw standard. But then none of these rules are black and white. So if it helps, I think we've heard what you want. What we call it shouldn't really matter, but what you're really looking for is a more assertive program in our problem spots and not waiting for those to be complained about before we take action.
Okay, can I just, so to me, the use of proactive and reactive, one's the opposite of the other. So that's what drove that bus, if you will. But then as Tim was talking about lawn signs, to me, that is proactive enforcement. That is going out on your own initiative as a bylaw officer. I'm trying to explain it and at the same time understand. If the word assertive makes everyone feel better, I'm fine with it. I like the concept of it. We weren't trying to be Gestapo, for the lack of a better word. We were just trying to get tighter enforcement, if that's a good description, tighter enforcement via more assertive enforcement. So therein lies the misunderstanding, if you will. You know, on the one hand, we're doing bylaw or proactive, via lawn signs and other things like that. And yet on the other hand, so anyway, that's my explanation. That's where we went astray. But if assertive is the word and we all understand what assertive enforcement is, I'm fine with it. But there's at least three other people that would like to speak, if that's okay with you, Mr. Neufeld.
going to address the sign.
What's that?
I was just going to address the sign.
Can he trump you? Okay, Mr. Neufeld.
And I think that that's important because what we see as proactive as it relates to the garage sale signs, right? That has been a particular direction or focus, saying we know that that's a problem or a hotspot, as Councillor Wilkinson has identified. We know that's a hotspot. Let's get out there and when we see it, let's deal with it. Let's not wait for people to complain about it. So I guess I don't see that as proactive. I see that as identifying what we know is a problem every Friday because they're sticking them in the ground for a Saturday, and we go out and we deal with it. I don't see that as proactive. I see that as more of an assertive program.
Okay, and then don't let me forget that I did ask you if we should give you more specifics on the assertive. Okay, so Councillor Thiessen, please.
It seems to me we're getting way too wrapped up in whether it's proactive, reactive, or assertive. At the end of the day, we hired bylaw enforcement officers to go out into the community, and if you see a flagrant violation, you take care of it, you deal with it. What we don't want is for them to sit in the office and wait for a call to come in. In the meantime, there are signs blowing over, there's awnings falling off of buildings, but we didn't get a call for that, so we don't go out and address it. I mean, at the end of the day, all it takes is a little bit of common sense and a little bit of initiative to go out, drive around, walk the beat, do whatever, look for flagrant violations, you deal with those. And some others, yeah, the painting or the little bit of paint peeling off, you're going to walk past that one. But I think, and don't just confine yourself to a couple of square blocks. I mean, get out into the larger community and deal with those. There's issues out there as well. Deal with those. I think just, again, let's not get wrapped up in what we call it. Let's just go out and do our job that we were hired to do.
Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, thank you. In my eyes, I don't want there to be any confusion. I want it to be a proactive approach to what we do. Now, having said that, let me back up a bit. There isn't any one of us during this last campaign, and it comes to light at a great time, that didn't get beat up over the condition of our uptown. Every one of us, time and time again. Every one of us at some point made some kind of pledge to do something with the uptown. So I don't want to give the perception that we're now going to go away from being proactive. Now, you can be proactive and still temper your position on what you take with respect to paint. Some buildings may need to be painted. Others may not. And I think that I still want to see that word used, and I understand where their CEO, Mr. Neufeld, come from. And I agree with Tim. Going looking after signs is being proactive. Making sure those signs are down and off the poles, which I saw two today, yes, are not taken down. They were something that they advertised over the weekend. So, but getting back to proactive and as opposed to reactive, I don't want to lose that word proactive with respect to what we do. We need to temper it a bit. So I guess what we're looking for here is some way of saying, okay, so if we all agree, and I'm not sure that we all do, if we all agree that it needs to be a proactive approach, to what degree? And to that, I would say maybe we could ask the mayor and the deputy mayor to sit along with administration or Ruth or the bylaw and lay out some guidelines about what you want to see. Obviously, if there's a lot of big paint issues, yeah, or take a picture of it and bring it in, let us get a look at it. And I'm sure we as the rest of council will agree with whatever steps you take. So again, I go back to number 2, and that's the way I'd like to see it kept.
Councillor Dunn.
You, Madam Mayor. First of all, through my compassion, you may have come off that I assumed or made it look like that you, the rest of council and yourself, don't appreciate it or think that bylaw are not doing the job. That was not the comment or the way it was meant to come off. So I apologize if that came off that way. It's not the way it was intended. When it came to bylaw, I talked to them today regarding some of the painted buildings, and particularly one gentleman that I've been after for ages about, and they said that they're not going to enforce anything that until the springtime anyway. So they all brought that to their attention in the CIP. When it comes to the point on regarding proactive assertiveness, so when it comes to the sign collection, that was a reactive thing, but they're being assertive. It's not a proactive thing. They're just being assertive about it. They always have been. When it comes to, we just put that proactive so they will be more assertive in the uptown. When it comes to Councillor Hammond talking about, I'm okay with the fact that if you would sit down and nail out the particulars, I'm okay with that. I like the fact that we're staying after the uptown and keep pushing, because we want that standard to come up. And we want everybody to know that we're going to stay on top of them. We're not going to let those people that are perpetual abusers of the situation get away with it. So, however it turns out, we can also have, though, when it comes to these bylaw officers, have that, if they're going to still use, we could be a reactive as long as they're using that same assertiveness as for the signs for the uptown. So we're not going to get nailed with that, oh, we're picking that person or that person. However we nail it, however we call it, I don't care. I just want to keep seeing the enforcement, a strong enforcement in the uptown.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Deputy Mayor.
Through the Mayor, thank you to Councillor Thiessen. It's a proactive bylaw for the uptown, so there is a lot of places that need it when you come into this town that I'd like to see too as a welcoming thing. I like the reactive part still, and I like the aggressive part. I was told I had an issue. I came in, I made a complaint, and I was told to go to CityWorks. So if we're reactive, we still have to go to CityWorks. And I know, Tim, you really like the way CityWorks worked, and now I'm hearing different. So I just want to make sure that we still have the CityWorks. We're reactive, but we're more aggressive, and it's hard to believe that we have these employees that we have to tell them how to go out there, and I know that they're not just sitting there waiting for a phone call to come in to go check it out, because they're busy all the time when I see them. So I don't know, but I still am going for option one.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Since Deputy Mayor Verbeke mentioned me there, that I'm not liking, no, I still like CityWorks. I like having it. I like that it's on the record. If I happen to see something while I'm driving around uptown, you know, I can go home and get it on the record. I think that's a great thing, having that. But no, I didn't say here tonight that I didn't like CityWorks. I think it's a great tool. Proactive, reactive, assertive, whatever. I kind of like where Councillor Thiessen was heading with that. Pretty much a common sense approach. I think we've had a good discussion here tonight. I think our CAO, you know, has got a pretty good handle on what we're trying to, you know, introduce here. I'd like to give maybe our CAO just a little bit of leverage here to, you know, run with this one a bit. And he knows, we just went through an election. I'm sure he knows the matters that we all went through, and how we all hammered it home in our campaign discussions. I think it would go a long way here if we maybe, you know, give a little bit of leverage here to our CAO on this one. I think he is reading us here tonight, and that would be a direction I'm willing to take. Whether he comes back with, you know, it's going to reactive, proactive, whatever, at the end of the day, we're probably going to look at it here. It seems to come to light here in the summertime is when the rubber hits the road with this thing. That's when we'll be coming back here end of July saying, I don't know, it's not working, or it is working, or we can see improvement. what would the rest of council think of that idea? Our CAO better define this one, along with the help of our mayor, is a suggestion I'm putting out there.
Mr. Neufeld, how do you feel about that? That's what I wanted you to speak to. Do you need more? I have confidence in the fact that you understand where we're coming from. I think we're all pretty clear, much more clear than we were back in late summer, early fall. So if that's enough for you, I mean, beyond, we still have to vote on the recommendation, but I'll let you speak to that.
As I'm listening to more of the comments, I'm thinking Councillor Thiessen is onto something. It doesn't really matter what we call it in the way that we then go out and enforce it, but it does have an impact on the legal side of it. That I know that is difficult to comprehend, but it does have an impact on whether or not council members and staff are protected by the Municipal Act, as to whether we are importing a proactive program as we have, as we did for this pilot project, or if we declare that we are a reactionary program, but we do it in a more assertive way. And to that, I also heard what Councillor Verbicki said. He likes number one if it had some different words, and I'm thinking that what he's referring to is if we had a reactive bylaw enforcement program that was understood to be conducted in a more assertive manner by our bylaws officers using the common sense that Councillor Thiessen has referred to, I think that there is a way of doing that. And perhaps, perhaps Councillor Hammond's suggestion that over some time using examples and having bylaw being able to say, this is what we were up against. Do you think that is this the standard that you're talking about, or are we going too far? Because one of the things we don't want to do is determine how we're going to apply a standard based on who it is. What we want to do is say, this is, regardless of who this is, this does not offend our sensibilities, or this does offend our sensibilities. That will take some time. That will take some, I don't want to call it training, but experience. Experience with what council feels is offensive to the sensibilities and what they are trying to accomplish. Because let's face it, if the sensibilities that we're trying to import in the uptown, if we aren't reaching them, and it's keeping us from being successful in one of the pillars of our strategic plan, then we've got a problem, right? We want to reinvent the uptown, and if our property standards are offensive to the point where we're not accomplishing that, then we've got a problem. So my suggestion is that this would take some time through examples, not necessarily laying out, we can't lay out the black and white, because I think that gets us right back to where we are. I think what we need to do is have examples, work with the bylaws officers, get them to understand what council's trying to accomplish in the bigger picture, and then apply those, apply that discretion to the situation at hand. And I say all of that knowing I too have driven down Mill Street, or walked down Mill Street, for example, and see cars parked in behind a building that have no license plates on them. Let's just set the whole law aside for a second about abandonment. But that to me offends my sensibilities. Those cars, how is it that somebody thinks that they can have a business in the uptown and park their cars, take the plates off of them and leave them there, when the rest of the municipality is trying to use Mill Street as the attraction piece to our reinvention of the uptown? So I don't know exactly how to satisfy everybody sitting up here, except to say that to me what you're describing is a reactive program that has a strong assertiveness attached to it with our bylaws officers. And to get to that point, it will take some time to help them understand what council wants to do. And I hope that answers your question, Mayor.
Councillor Hammond.
With all due respect, Mr. Neufeld, that's not what I'm saying. No, I'm saying proactive. And I'll remind council, we had a group here at the last council meeting when we were talking about retail stores and cannabis, and one of them very clearly pointed out, well, I don't know what you people are doing uptown, but it isn't working. As part of his submissions. I don't want us to go away from the fact that we promised the municipality and the residents here that we were going to continue to do. I'm afraid that if we don't use the words proactive, that officer that's designated to do that area once a day for an hour or 2 hours or 3, whatever it is, may find over a period of time to be eroded away to something different because he's called upon to do something else. And then we revert right back to the fact that we don't have somebody uptown handing out the information for CIPs and other things. So my position has not changed.
Well, option 1, option 2, option 3. Because I think I'm of the opinion it comes down to that. Once you choose the options, if then you want to give some further direction, I suppose we can do that. You know, and I understand what you're saying too, Mr. Neufeld, but the fact that liability is constantly brought up, like tonight again with the scent bylaw, I feel like we've become so afraid of our own shadow that we are handcuffing ourselves to the light standard. We are in the business of the potential of being liable is a fact of life. We give our bylaw officers certain rights and we say to them, well, you know, you have to enforce the bylaws, and then, well, if they're not there, then sometimes we call the police, and the police say they're not responsible, but we're putting them almost on the same level as the police, somewhat scaled back, but police are proactive in everything that they do. So there's mixed signals coming all the way around. I just feel that council is going to more than likely stick with proactive, and, you know, quite honestly, liability is going to be something that we're going to have to face. We have insurance. I think when we talk about people who want to sue us, we've got a few people right now that would like us to pay for certain supposed perceived damages, and we're telling them, go to your insurance company. That's what insurance companies are for. Maybe we just need to take that upon ourselves too. This liability is the name of the game that municipal government operates in, and if that's what's going to happen, it's what's going to happen. We are trying to be responsible in owning our town. We own this. When the downtown is a hellhole, we own it. The people sitting up here own it. Administration doesn't even own it. It's us, according to the residents. So to me, for us to take a hand in this, firm hand on the tiller, I don't think we have an option but to be proactive if we want to wrestle this back from the bullies and the people that are determined to send us down the rabbit hole.
My reference, and I believe the reference from other administration with respect to the liability, is not the same as saying we don't think you should do it because of the liability. It's more, we have an obligation to make sure that we raise that because it's a risk. I agree with you that liability is part of this game. We just have to look at the risk and decide if you want to take it or not. I didn't mean to imply that the liability concerns should keep us from having a proactive program. It's just that we need to make sure we bring everything to council's light.
Deputy Mayor.
For the mayor, I would vote for no, it doesn't matter how you vote now. I mean, if you vote reactive, aggressive, then somebody's going to say, oh, you didn't vote the right way. Just take out the word proactive. And you go at it, and you dedicate an hour and a half a day. It doesn't have, you're proactive, but you're also reactive, and you're also aggressive. So, I mean, if everybody's hung up on the word proactive, take it out. But I mean, I don't want to seem like I don't want to do the uptown. I want to do more than the uptown, but just to say reactive aggressive or proactive, I mean, I know where everybody else is coming from, but I guess I'm going to have to side with option 2 because I'm going to look like that I don't care about the downtown, but take out the word proactive then.
Did you want to speak?
I have a fourth option, perhaps. Option 4 could be if council wished to direct administration to revert to reactive bylaw enforcement with the uptown, but that bylaw enforcement officers, if they see a violation of the sign bylaw, the land maintenance bylaw, the property standards bylaw, while on duty, report the violation through CityWorks. So that is more of an aggressive form of enforcement. The reasons we use reactive versus proactive enforcement is, I guess, because in our world that is meaningful. And in the world of property standards officers, it's meaningful. And they've been told over many, many years that their job is to be a reactive one, and that's because of the Section 450 of the Municipal Act. So that's kind of been ingrained in them for many, many years. And so using those words are, I guess, helpful to direct them more effectively, and also to assist them in understanding what council is really seeking. But if you provide the direction to be reactive and yet to report what they see, if they see a violation while on duty, then that I think is helpful in providing direction.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. And could you add a certain amount of time allotted to the uptown so that there's, what they were saying about so many hours, like the mayor said, about an hour and a half a day or 2 hours a day is directed strictly to the uptown in that same option 4?
I would hesitate to do that only because I think that might be time not efficiently spent. If there's no violations in the uptown, then that's really too much time to be spending. I just hesitate to put a time limit, minimum or maximum, on those opportunities. However, if that's council's direction, that's certainly what we'll do.
Councillor Thiessen.
I'm going to move that we go with option 2 and be proactive.
Seconder for that, Councillor Hammond. Comments? Councillor Wilkinson, no? Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, the bylaws. No,
I'm not sure I understand your comment.
no, that's personal comment.
Well, I think you should keep that to yourself then, unless you're speaking. So, option 2, all in favor? Opposed? And that's passed as option 2. Moving on to the vacant lands on Seneca Road, the archaeological assessment.
The municipality owns vacant lands on Seneca Road in Leamington, which lands are legally described as Lot 15 on Plan M188, and they are shown on the aerial photo within the report. The subject lands were part of lands that were acquired by the municipality in about 2005 as a result of the non-payment of taxes. The subject lands have an area of just under 3 acres and they are zoned industrial, medium, and heavy. They are currently vacant, but being zoned for industrial use, it is desirable that the lands be sold and developed. The issue that arose while considering the sale of these lands is the fact that they are subject to a 1982 development agreement between the municipality and the then developer. That agreement prohibits any development prior to an archaeological assessment, and it's binding upon all subsequent owners of the lands. When undertaking assessments, archaeologists follow the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists published by the Ontario Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and that sets out 4 stages of archaeological fieldwork. The purpose of the first 3 stages are to identify archaeological sites, assess the degree of cultural heritage value or interest, and recommend the most appropriate strategies for the site when mitigation of development impacts will be necessary. The archaeologist undertakes mitigation strategies during the 4th stage. The standards and guidelines also include provisions for engaging Indigenous communities during the archaeological fieldwork. In order to make these lands more attractive to any potential purchaser, the municipality retained Fisher Archaeological Consulting, who commenced an archaeological assessment following the standards and guidelines. The municipality also engaged 5 First Nations who have participated through this process. The recommendation of the consultant for Stage 4 is that topsoil within the area of Stage 3 testing plus 10 meters beyond the edges of the tests, which is approximately 1/3 of the subject lands, be mechanically removed to search for features in the subsoil by hand below the topsoil layer. That strategy has been reviewed by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, who have no concerns with the strategy, and to date, none of the First Nations have raised any issue with the same. This report is being brought prior to the 2019 budget so that the consultant may commence any preliminary work required for the Stage 4 mitigation and that the work may proceed as soon as the ground is sufficiently thawed. To date, costs of the approximate amount of $27,700, and I believe there's been, we have received an invoice since then, so it's around $29,000 have been incurred. The budget for the Stage 4 mitigation is about $50,000, and that includes the fee payable to the consultant plus the fees for the monitors from the participating First Nations. This would be paid out of the legal department's professional services budget. It's recommended that council approve the Stage 4 archaeological assessment of the property known as Lot 15 on 12M 188, being vacant land on Seneca Road, be completed by Fisher Archaeological Consultants, and that council approve the amount of $50,000 to be paid from the 2019 budget for this purpose.
Comments or questions, council? Councillor Hammond?
Mayor, thank you. Just a comment. Should this pass, Ruth, and I'm asking that, or do they, when they submit or remit a bill, do they itemize how many hours of work and do they define when the hours were there? Or do they just give you an inclusive bill that says 48 hours and this is what it comes to?
No, they do define the hours and times they were there.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to matters for approval, I see there's none. Other matters for consideration, also none. Report on closed session. Turn that over to you, Ms. Percy.
A closed meeting was held at 5:30 p.m. prior to open session of the council meeting pursuant to subsection 239(2)B, subsection 239(2)C, and 2D of the Municipal Act for the purpose of considering 3 items. The first item, confidential report LLS 0919 dated January 11th regarding appointments to Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee. As a result of this meeting, council provided direction and the following suggested action is brought before council for consideration in open session. That Madison Binder, Oana Ballant, Monica Klassen, Abby Weigel, Cameron Friesen and Sydney Youssef be appointed to the Leamington Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee for a term to expire at the end of the school year. You'll need a motion for that.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried.
The second item, confidential report LLS 1219 dated January 21st, 2019, regarding potential disposition of municipal lands. Council provided direction to administration with regard to the matter. The third item, verbal report regarding labor relations, firefighters negotiations direction. Council provided direction to administration with regard to the matter. Proper notice of the meeting was given and the meeting adjourned at 6:08 p.m.
Moved by Councillor Dunn, Councillor Thiessen, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. Consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 0519 being a bylaw to provide for licensing and regulating businesses in the municipality of Leamington. Bylaw 0619 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6018 being a bylaw to impose fees and charges on the corporation and the municipality. Those two bylaws are as a result of the direction at the last council meeting with respect to business licensing. Bylaw 0719 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the municipality of Leamington at its meeting held January 22nd, 2019.
Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. Notices of motion, there are none. Open session. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to bring to the attention of everybody the grand opening of the bridge on February 1st at 3 p.m., the Youth Resource Center, as well as on February 9th and 10th, we'll be doing the Giving Spoon Soup Luncheon at the bridge, with all the proceeds going to the bridge. Come on out. We're going to have about 20 soups each day, and it's free and open to everybody. Any donations you leave will be paid towards the bridge. So,
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, thank you. I would like to commend the ladies that put on the Erie Shores Foundation Gala on Saturday night. And first of all, I want to thank all of council for being there. It was a great night, and it was great to have my colleagues there. You know, I want to name the ladies that are in charge of this. Susie George, Shelley Gabriel Gale, Brianna Bento, Alyssa Bento, Jill Tewill, Betty Tewill, and Lily DeChalco was a big part of that committee and wasn't able to be there because of the passing of her father-in-law, Carmen. But these ladies work all year long to put on that event. As you know, the ones that were there, they raised in excess of $130,000 on that given night. I was really surprised at the turnout of the residents, with the weather being as bad as it was on Saturday night. I think the people there enjoyed themselves and had a great time. And when I left at a little after 11, there was still 90% of the people there. I was really surprised. So congratulations to all that committee. Thank you.
Anyone else? Since last week, some of you complained because I didn't say what I'd done the week before. I thought I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis. I had training for 2 days with Essex Power and the board, which was very interesting. Spent for a good part of Friday doing that, as well as half the day Saturday. But I want you to know that there are lots of residents that are, and actually organizations that are calling and making appointments to come and see me. This week, I spoke with one of our local ministers about homelessness, and we're going to work towards a strategy. Called Mayor Drew Dilkins to get his point of view. Now that I have his cell number, I told him he might be sorry that he gave it to me. Met with the bridge as well to talk about some of their initiatives that they're having coming down the pipe, and there are some really interesting ideas there. Lots of generous people in our community. So looking forward to meeting with more residents. Pretty much every day is full. I had thought I'd put in the morning hours, 9:30 till maybe 1:30. I'm here till 4 o'clock a lot of days. I'm certainly enjoying meeting with residents. We're going to put forward some kind of a, a communication plan where people will have it's not easier access, but perhaps it might be easier for them. We have them right now call, either they can, message me, but call our executive assistant. But we're going to have some kind of public format for people to get together and chat. We just have to nail it down, and it'll be after after March break. So we've got lots of things in the hopper, if you will. Lots of interest in our community as well, being contacted by lots of different organizations. As I'm sure you've seen social media, there's lots of things happening. What's the really great thing about the amphitheater, and it is, I think you said it, Deputy Mayor, one time about if you build it, they will come, and it has certainly panned out. And the fact that we did it in the format we did last year, I think worked really well, that we set the example, and now we've got people coming up to us and asking to be a part of it. So that was really what we wanted, wasn't it? So lots of exciting things happening in our community, lots of people looking for opportunity. So it's a busy time and an exciting time for us. And it's a high note. It's a high note as well to see where we've come from, and those of us that were on council after the Heinz closing, we've seen the highs and the lows. So I feel like we are on the cusp of greatness, so let's hope that continues. So we'll all continue to be available to the public. Lots of us have gone together to different functions. I think that's important, to be out in the community with all of the demographics in our community. I think that's key, and that will be what we will be known for, I believe, in these next 4 years, that we are accessible, we're visible, and approachable. So anyway, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, statement of members non-debatable. Deputy Mayor.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Works for doing what they did with the snow removal. Yes, even my street got plowed, but not as well as Rickway. So that resident out there that's complaining about Rickway not being clean, come out to, just come out. I mean, they're working as fast as they can. I was going to mention Peters Street too, but I thought I better not. But no, great job, guys. You know, I'm glad we didn't cut no money out of the budget for that, because Snowmageddon's coming again. So, and it is starting to freeze rain outside. Thank you.
If there's no one else now, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Thiessen, all in favor? Carried, and good night.